there, and welcome back to Building with the Boys. It's time for another Halloween horror. And in this one, we're going to be talking about the bizarre case of Spring-Heeled Jack. Now, I know what you're saying. Who the bloody hell is Spring-Heeled Jack? Well, Spring-Heeled Jack was a rock star in his day. He was very well known. He was one of the most popular characters, and then was just largely forgotten. So what was he? Well, he was a monster that appeared in the Victorian era. The first sighting of Spring-Heeled Jack was in 1837. And it is a really weird story. So for some background, Victorian London was quickly becoming quite vibrant with new cultures and ethnicities and religions suddenly congregating in one place in this big melting pot. So where you've gone from what was largely either Christian or Catholic area has now got an influx of different cultures and different beliefs and things like that. So spiritualism, mysticism, and different kind of beliefs started being banded around, and it became very popular. So throughout the Victorian era, different levels of mysticism we start seeing come in en masse. It's when we start heavily seeing ghost stories appear and things like that. Charles Dickens was writing about ghosts in this era, and vaudeville became popular, so seances, Ouija boards, things like that became, parlor games became big business. So there was a lot of this kind of mysticism going around, and there was this belief that there were a trio of ghosts that would stalk the streets of London at night and grab people. And the most famous of which was the Hammersmith ghost. And the Hammersmith ghost would attack and then leap over buildings. Like entire houses 10 foot high. That's key. So in 1837 we got our first known sighting of Spring-Heeled Jack, and what happened was a young girl called Mary Stevens, who was 18, she was a servant girl, was walking home when a figure, a gentlemanly figure so described, jumped out and grabbed her, and she explained that there was something not right. This wasn't just a guy. Said he had cold, clammy hands like a corpse. And he started ripping at her and trying to kiss her. And she said that he felt like he had metal claws, that he was wearing metal claws. Not that he had them, that he was wearing them, and was tearing at her clothes. She managed to get away and run. He escaped, people gave chase, and there was no one found him. Now in that story, nothing's reported about jumping or leaping, just that he jumped out. Now, he could have jumped out or he could have jumped out. No one knows. So it's quite vague, that one. But then the next night, the very next night, we got our second sign of Spring-Heeled Jack, where he does leap over a wall in front of a carriage, causing the horses to startle. The carriage overturns. People are injured. Jack escapes. People chase after Jack and they watch him jump over a 9-foot wall. They say in one bound, it wasn't like a climb up. They said they watched him run and jump and clear a 9-foot wall in one move. Now Jack's appearances become more and more common. More people are seeing Spring-Heeled Jack. He's not necessarily attacking, but they are seeing this figure leap over walls and on top of rooftops. And a lot of these are reported. When he gets really sinister is an incident with a girl called Jane Alsop, who was at home, and there was a knock on her door, and standing there was a policeman, and he says, "We've caught Spring-Heeled Jack in the lane. Bring a candle, we need to see him." So she does as she's instructed. She brings a candle, she walks out. The moment she hands the candle to the police officer, she notices he's wearing a long black cloak, which Spring-Heeled Jack was described as wearing. It's at that point he throws off the cloak, and she says this hideous figure is standing in front of her. She said he had burning red eyes, and he spat, like vomited, white and blue flame came out of his mouth. She said he had the appearance of a man, but a very gaunt face. And she said the same thing. He was wearing metal claws. He then lunges at her, and he's attacking her, and she manages to get away, and she runs back to her house. Jack, in one bound, is behind her and rips at her neck. That's a picture of Spring-Heeled Jack in this incident. An artist's illustration, clearly there was no photography. So yeah, he's upped his game. So he's now attacking. She's scratched and she's bleeding. She managed to slam a door. Jack isn't seen. She reports what's happened. A couple of days later, near to where Jane lived, a young girl called Lucy was walking home, and her brother was walking behind her. I always find this part of the story odd. Her brother's walking, but he's about 10 feet behind her, and they walk down an alleyway, and she says she can see someone leaning at an angle in the alleyway, and as she approaches cautiously, the eyes lit up red, spat blue flame and white flame out of claws. Jacket comes off, and they also he's got a very gaunt white appearance, very thin man, and she goes into shock, and basically has a fit, and she's fitted for a good hour when this happens. And the reports go for Spring Heel Jack. As a result of this, sightings of Spring Heel Jack go through the roof. So lots of people are seeing Spring Heel Jack. Spring Heel Jack then becomes kind of the talk of the town. So stories, penny dreadfuls are being written with Spring Heel Jack as the main character, the main antagonist. Ones like this. So sightings of Spring Heel Jack increase, and the more bizarre incidents of leaping out on people, and there are incidents where people have chased him into an alleyway and he has just vaulted onto the roof of a house, and they've just seen him jump and fly away like some sort of springy demon. One of the most famous incidents was in 1877. So this is a long time after the first sighting of Spring Heel Jack. This is a good 40 years later, in Aldershot, a prison barracks. The guard on duty that night could see something in the distance. It was dark, but he could see something bounding at speed in a diagonal down the lane towards where he was, and then vanish. He didn't really think anything of it. And then the next thing he knows, Jack is standing next to him. So he's gone from nowhere to next to him, and just slaps him. This is really weird. Jack just bang, dry hand slaps him across the face, and just starts repeatedly slapping the shit out of this soldier. His face is lit up like cherry red. Now, was Jack slapping him, or was he trying to use the claws? Anyway, he manages to get his gun out. Other soldiers heard the commotion, and they fire at Jack. They chase him and corner him and fire at him. Hit nothing. Jack vaults the wall and he's gone. And that's pretty much the last sighting of Spring Heel Jack, the last proper sighting of this era. He is seen again and again and again, and this is where you get an idea of what's going on, because at this point all of the sightings of Spring Heel Jack were in London. Now Spring Heel Jack is being seen in the Midlands, and he's being seen in Northamptonshire, and he's being seen in Lincolnshire, and he's being seen down south. So plus Spring Heel Jack's getting aging Spring Heel Jack at this point. So we'll talk about what I think was happening after why all of a sudden he's being seen everywhere. There were a lot of kind of speculation as to what Spring Heel Jack was, and it was in the press, it was in the media, it was in the newspapers, and it was discussed by the Mayor of London. Brought up Spring Heel Jack, and he believed that there were a group of young aristocrats that had entered a wager where they would enter London dressed either as a ghost, a bear, or a devil to scare people. It was kind of, for gits and shiggles. This is what they were doing. And there's some credence to that, because most of the descriptions of Spring Heel Jack do sound like a costume. They don't sound like this is what they sound like a costume. Then you add sensationalization to it as well. Where was he really spitting blue and white flame, or was this ribbons? Or was this an elaborate mask? Was this some toffs scaring the locals? Could be. One of the sort of big ones that was named as Spring Heel Jack was a nobleman called Henry Beresford, who was the Marquess of Waterford, and he was known as the Mad Marquess. He was in the news a lot in the 1830s for drunk fighting and all kinds of things, and the Riot Club, if you've ever heard of that, that was part of their thing, and he was kind of a hellraiser, and he was known for very elaborate, sadistic practical jokes, telling people their wives had died when they hadn't, and like, who's this funny for, mate? This is kind of sadism, but also scaring the hell out of people was a big thing for him. And he'd said on multiple times, part of kind of his kick when they'd been out drinking was to jump out on people. So was it him? A lot of people believe it was him, and if it wasn't just one person, it was a bunch of people. Almost that this was part of a university or a college or something. This was their thing. They donned the mantle of Spring-Heeled Jack, which is one theory. But you think by this point, 100 years later, we would have found a Spring-Heeled Jack outfit in someone's loft or some confession somewhere. I was part of the Spring-Heeled Jack Society. So the last known sight of Spring-Heeled Jack was in 1986, where again there was a former army officer was cycling in South Herefordshire in Wales, just on the Welsh border, and he said, this was broad daylight, he said that his eye was caught by something in a field. He said he just saw a man appear and disappear, and a man appear and disappear, and he was bounding closer and closer to him. He said then all of a sudden this guy's just vaulted over this massive hedge and is next to him, whap, slaps him in the face so goddamn hard he comes off his bike, and then just bounded away into the next field. This guy said he had a hand mark on his face for like an hour and a half. He said that's how hard he hit him. He slapped him so hard he came off the bike. So what the bloody hell is this? Has somebody else took up the mantle? Did somebody else take up the mantle of Spring-Heeled Jack? And how were they doing it? Were they vaulting over 9 feet walls, or did that just sell newspapers? Did that sell more penny dreadfuls? Because, I mean, he climbed it, might have climbed over a 9-foot wall. That's not that hard to do. You get a foot on something, climb up and off you go. But that doesn't sell newspapers, whereas he bounded over it and a single bound does sell newspapers. But Spring-Heeled Jack started getting seen in America as well. Now, there's a direct correlation between the more Spring-Heeled Jack books, plays, and talk went out, the more people saw him. And that is a beautiful example of mass hysteria. It's kind of what happened a few years ago with the clowns that were appearing. Once word gets out the clowns are appearing, more people dress as clowns and start doing it. So my belief is that this probably was some practical joke that went entirely too far, very sadistic, by some sport rich kids. And then other people heard it, got a kick out of it and thought, I'm going to do that. And without being a sort of conglomerate of people, I just think other people thought, I'm going to be Spring-Heeled Jack. And this is what we got going on. But that is the tale of Spring-Heeled Jack. The very weird tale of Spring-Heeled Jack, who was the monster of Victorian London. And that is all for this edition of Halloween Horrors. In a world you can be anything at all, just be nice. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. And we will see you on the next one.